Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Board of Adjustments meeting. We will call this meeting to order, and the first order of business is review and approval of meeting minutes from July 19th. It was a short meeting. I did not see any issues or even typos. Did anybody else? So do I hear a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
There's one. Do I have a second?
Second that.
Approve or noted and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? None. It is approved. So now we are on to our CUP tonight. Oh, actually, Amy, before you start, the public comment section for 15 minutes is open for anybody with issues not to be addressed tonight that would like to make a statement for the city can do so on any topic they want. All right, seeing none, we will go from item 2 to item 3. Thank you.
Good evening. Before you tonight, we have a conditional use permit proposal for 960 West Palouse River Drive. The applicant is Bridge Bible Church, and they're proposing to construct a 9,760 square foot addition onto their existing church located at 960 West Palouse River Drive. The expansion includes a new sanctuary, a new basement activity center, as well as the remodel of the existing classrooms and the remodel of the existing sanctuary to the fellowship hall. A little bit of background about Bridge Bible Fellowship. The use of this property by Bridge Bible Fellowship dates back to 1988. In September of 2005, Bridge Bible Fellowship applied for a conditional use permit to allow for an 1,100 square foot addition onto the existing church. That conditional use permit was approved with no conditions. Of the subject property, as you can see, just north of Palouse River Drive, across from the cyclocross tracks owned by the city of Moscow. Subject property is outlined here in in red, highlighted in purple. This is a closer up of the aerial image of the subject property. You can see the existing church sits here, somewhat center, a little north of the property. The subject property is currently consists of 4 separate parcels to be combined into one parcel upon development. The largest parcel, which contains the church, is approximately 1.52 acres. The 2 smaller parcels both contain accessory buildings, are approximately 0.41 acres and 0.24 acres. The last and smallest parcel contains driveway approach access by Willowview Place and is 0.06 acres. The approximate size of all 4 lots combined is 2.23 acres. And the parcel to the north, east, and west of the subject property are all residential homes. And the parcel to the south, as mentioned before, is across Palouse River Drive, is the cyclocross tracks owned by the city of Moscow. Zoning of the subject property, as you can see, is R1. Adjacent properties to the east are R3. Adjacent properties to the north and west are also R1. Adjacent property to the south is located within the Farm Ranch Outdoor Recreational Zoning District. And adjacent property to the east is also located within the R1, but also in R3 Medium Density Zoning District. To continue with zoning, setback requirements for R1 are 25 feet in the front, 20 in the rear, and a combined total of 15 on the 2 sides, with no side being less than 5. An additional zoning requirement for all uses other than dwellings in SR, R1, R2, and R3 is that a type A landscape buffer is required between those uses. That is to provide a visual buffer between uses of different intensity to reduce erosion and stormwater runoff, to protect property values, and to eliminate potential land use conflicts by mitigating adverse impacts from outdoor or from dust, odor, litter, noise, glare, lights, signs, buildings, and parking areas. Another requirement of zoning is for all uses other than dwellings, no more than 35% of the lot area covered should be covered by buildings. In this case, the site plan calculation for building footprint to lot ratio is 13%. The applicant has provided a site plan showing compliance with all of these requirements. This is a view of the subject property looking to the north. This is a subject property looking to the west, and the subject property looking from the northeast corner back at the subject property. Streets and area access. The subject property has 150 feet of frontage along Palouse River Drive. Palouse River Drive is a minor arterial and has a 50-foot right-of-way with a tree lawn, curb, gutter, and sidewalk on the south side. Along Willow Place, the property has 100 feet of frontage. Is also a neighborhood cul-de-sac. The subject property can be accessed via these two vehicular access approaches on the Palouse River Drive, and the second on Willow Place. I did want to point out there is one inaccuracy in your staff report. It does mention that there will be a tree lawn, sidewalk, curb, and gutter installed on the north side. That is not true. It will be a small retaining wall, sidewalk, curb, and gutter. So the tree lawn is eliminated. There was no requirement from engineering to have a tree lawn on that side. This is a look from the subject property looking to the west, right in front of the building. So this is the current parking lot. Sorry, is that south? Yeah. South. This is a view from Willow Place cul-de-sac, showing the current vacant lot and the current driveway approach. And here are the elevations for the new proposed expansion. As you can see, this is the look from the east and the south. This is the existing floor plan showing the current classrooms on the lower level, and then on the main floor, the existing sanctuary. The proposed floor plan of the lower level is keeping the existing classrooms and doing a renovation, as well as adding the new basement activity center. Floor shows a new sanctuary hall, as well as the 2,423 square foot fellowship hall, which is the current sanctuary. This is an overall site plan showing the landscape, the 10-foot landscape buffer required, as well as all the internal landscape islands from the parking lot reconfiguration. Shows the expansion of the existing, so this would be the existing building here, and this would be the expansion out here to the north. As far as parking is concerned, religious facilities are required to have one parking space per 4 seats, plus one per 100 square feet, or plus one per 100 square feet of open assembly area. The existing church provides 104 parking spaces on the site, which far exceeds the requirement, which far exceeds the required 22 parking spaces required by Moscow City Code 4-6-2. With the remodel and expansion of the existing church, 128 parking spaces are required for the entire facility. The site plan provided shows a total of 146 spaces, providing an excess of 18 spaces. So tonight's recommendation from staff would be to approve the conditional use permit for 960 West Palouse River Drive with no conditions, and direct staff to prepare the relevant criteria and standards to be reviewed at an upcoming meeting. And I would be happy to take any questions you might have.
I had one and you already answered it, and I'll just, for clarification, in terms of lot coverage, they're way below what they could do.
Correct.
Because the expansion is actually much bigger than the existing building, so, okay.
Correct.
On the south side, how close is the future crossing for Conestoga? How far is it? Just Willow Place, I know, is just the next one. Is Conestoga just across the street then on the other side?
So Conestoga would be the adjacent street to the west. Let me go back to the aerial. So this would be Conestoga here.
Okay, and so the new Conestoga or the new access to the 400 houses on the other side?
It would be further down West Palouse River Drive.
Okay.
Is it directly across? Oops, hold on one second.
Okay.
It does.
Let me zoom out a little bit. Okay, yeah. Yes, that should be correct. It should align right down.
Okay.
Another question then for staff. We have 6 letters. Were those received
Today.
today? Okay. I say this with a little bit of trepidation because anybody that's been to a meeting that I've been chair of, I usually read these, but there's 6 of them. And so I'm going to decline, but I will summarize. There's 6 of them. 3 of them are in favor. 3 of them are not. 3 of them say they're good neighbors, and 3 of them argue that. In general, there's nothing in terms of finding of fact of size, space, zoning, anything that would be, an issue with any one of the criteria that we look at. So with all due respect to the people that wrote these, I'll just say the city has them, but we didn't get them in time. And they're heartfelt opinions, but I don't think that they'll affect tonight. So I'm just going to say they're 3 for, 3 against, and I don't think there's a need to read them, which is not typically what I normally do.
Any other questions for staff?
Thanks, Amy. With that, I'll open it up to the applicant or a representative for the applicant to come up and tell us about this CUP. And please state your name and address in the mic for the recording.
And if you happen to be able to write your name down, if you make comment on this clipboard here, that would be helpful as well for spelling purposes.
My name is Evan Laubach. I'm the owner and principal of Reliant Engineering, and I am reside at 248 Northwest Sunrise Drive in Pullman, Washington, 99163. I get the bookwork out of the way.
Thank you.
Okay. Actually, on this particular project, I am the civil site engineer, I'm the structural engineer, and I'm also the quasi-architect. So for those of you who know me or don't know me, I did work in an architect's office for 7 years, and I started my career in architecture and switched to civil engineering. And so I have my hands that I do things in both courts. So I don't want to spend a lot of time going through the plans because you've have those in front of you. What I'd like to do is point out some of the things. In general, there were kind of 3 parts to what initially I've been tasked with. One was to increase the capacity of their sanctuary. Obviously, that's kind of the goal of the whole project and what brought all this together. The other one is to find a way to do that expansion and fit within, the code parameters that are provided by city code or by building code or the like, fire code, all of those. And then the third was really impressed upon me by, the staff at the church was that we want to minimize the impact to the neighboring property. We're in a community residential setting. We want to be good neighbors and that kind of thing. And so from a design aspect, those were really heavy and what I spent most of my time working through these plans and working with the client to come up with ways where we could be the least impactful to the neighborhood from noise, aesthetics, traffic, all of those kinds of things. And so those are the points that I'd like to kind of briefly go through here. And first with the elevations here that we have, see if I can, yeah, there we go. Up here on this side, the ground elevation is clear up here right now existing, and then it continues to go uphill here. So this part of the building is setting, if you look at your plans, so I've kind of enlarged these, but this comes off of A1, which you guys have in your packet. But you'll see that comes down right through here. This is the existing grade of at the front of the building. So the building is going at grade. We're not climbing way above existing grade there. And then the other thing that you have is this is the basement. This is the only exposed wall of the basement is this little piece here, and we'll talk more about that. This is the basement set in here where they plan to have the activity center, which really what the activity center is for, what they want is having a dedicated area for their youth programs and some of the other functions that they do They offered it up to the community for some square dance classes periodically and some things like that. But anyway, having that as a basement activity center really, cuts down on noise leaving the building and that kind of thing. And then the other thing that I wanted to point out, well, if I can get it there, is that, this is the peak of the existing building, and we're keeping the wall height below the highest point on the building already. So we pulled that down. We pulled the roof line down in the back to try to minimize our exposure to the neighbors in the back, rather than having a monosloped roof that went all the way up like a lot of churches do. We pulled that down, and then this turned the roof the other way, pulled it down here so that it's, less obtrusive to the neighbors. That's only 8.5 feet there from the eave down to the ground at that point. So, way less than a house would ever have, even an outbuilding would have. And then the overall height of the building is about 20 feet there, roughly. And again, that's, less than a 2-story house on that end of the building as our influence there. And then it's, the kind of the same thing we were talking about here. Here's the ground level up here, and that's at the building. And then this comes uphill as you come away from this side of the building. So the building is really down from, any access, and there'll be a retaining wall that will run along this wall. That's what that outline of that jog line is there, so that there can be access here along the side of the building. But again, it's set down in, recessed. And then when you look at the, the street view from Palouse River Drive, you can see that the addition barely even shows. And this is up at a kind of an elevation view. This drops away at 10% here. So you really can't even, this is set back so far that you can't even see this peak from down below in the parking lot. And there'll be a little bit of the awning that goes over the front entry that'll stick out past the building. But generally from Palouse River Drive, I did not mean to do that. There'll be very little view. Well, I did something wrong there. The thing just took off on me. It might have been because I had this on the top of it, you suppose. There we go. Thank you. All right. Okay. So, and then we have, the interior, which, come on, there we go. This is their current sanctuary here. What's not shown on these plans is there's a series of windows all the way down each side of this. So, during events that they have now, during the summertime, those windows can be open and create some, noise to the neighbors. And that, that's all the chairs get taken down in there, and that's kind of the activity area that they have now. So kind of keep that in mind as we go forward in some of these other ones. This is the sanctuary here now, and you can see it next to the, the existing sanctuary that's there, and a remodeled kitchen that's expanded. So here we have a triple set of walls between any noise in here and getting outside. We have double walls here of noise from the sanctuary getting outside. We have a double area here, and we have these closet areas here. And then this area, half of the height of that wall is concrete there in the back of the building. And this floor actually sits down below. So if you go back to, I got to figure this out here. I'm not doing very well. No. Why does it? I'm sorry. I apologize. Me and my technology here. Show me what to do, and then if I mess it up again,
We're just going to go up here and push
that one.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. So that should be forward. Okay. So, what was I gonna? Oh, yeah. So here on the back of the building again, you can see that's the floor elevation there of the sanctuary right there. And then we have that concrete wall that comes up here and that. And so it's down. And of course, the basement is completely below grade. So. So that's kind of, you know, what I want to point out there is that, you know, we're doing everything we can to try to isolate noise in the neighborhood and that kind of thing. This is the basement here, and all that's exposed of the whole basement is that wall right there. This is a concrete below grade wall. That's a concrete below grade wall. That's a concrete below grade wall. And then of course, all of this is up against the, you know, the existing building there. So. This is the existing site plan here. And what I wanted to point out here is right now, there is that access road that comes in there. You can see it clear over top of the, you know, the 10-foot setbacks that are now required. This area right in here encroaches into the 10-foot setback. There's another area here that encroaches into the 10-foot setback. And there's an area down here on the parking lot that encroaches into the 10-foot setback. And then you can see here that there's a bunch there when the church just recently purchased this lot here. But before that, you can see that the parking lot even encroached into that 10-foot setback clear back along here. And all of that with the new remodel is being pulled back away from things and squared up and increased the setbacks to the full city required 10-foot setbacks for the property. And then on this area here, the building's actually 20 feet. It's about 22 feet back. Here at the worst point right here is about 22 feet back from the property line there. And then the other thing that I guess I'll go back one here that I wanted to point out was here in this parking lot here, you have all of this parking up here on the upper part, which is up against, you know, you have residents here and residents here. And then if we go forward to here, what's left in parking up here, this in that same area that I was showing you all of this, there's 35 parking stalls. This area that's left up here in that same area only has 20 parking stalls. So we've reduced significantly the amount of parking stalls that are up there. Plus there was actually a lot more parking up there that wasn't striped because of the extra large size of it. You can see there's way more area in the middle than is required for a standard parking lot. So we've reduced, you know, our impact to the neighbor of noise right up against them by reducing the number of cars. The other thing that we've done that is hard to read on here, but you can see it on your plan. This is all handicap parking. This is all senior parking. And then there's guest parking over here. So the idea being that it's to reduce the, you know, the greater traffic area. In other words, not always are handicap stalls always filled, not always are senior parking filled, not always are guest parking filled. So it's a way to encourage people that when they utilize, you know, the bigger, larger lot down below. The other thing we've done is that, you know, we had this access in here, that's 12.5%. This new access will be 5%. It's more squared up with Willow Place. This one, you know, people could swing around here and kind of take a run up at the hill. It's a slip and slide in the wintertime. So, you know, we're looking to increase traffic safety here coming into the parking lot. Also, there's the start of the cul-de-sac right there. So we're pulling that intersection out of the cul-de-sac and moving it, you know, into the real street area, opening up the cul-de-sac and setting it aside a little bit more to be allowed to use for, you know, more kid traffic that like to use cul-de-sacs and things like that, and hopefully make that a little safer there. The other thing that you'll see sticks out there at the bottom of the hill. So, this is kind of circuitous. You come in, go over here, come back around these parking stalls, and then come through here. And that, and so right now with all the extra parking up here and the circuitous route coming in here, it's presumed that, more people would come in on Willow Place. It's not a guarantee, but if we make the access off of Palouse River Drive more friendly, where we come in here, come straight in, we have an access straight in this way, so there's good traffic flow. There's good traffic flow up here. This is a fire truck turnaround access right there. And so we've straightened out all of these circuitous paths that used to kind of go through the parking lot and eliminated that. And hopefully by increasing the size of the lower lot, pulling some of the cars out of the upper lot and that kind of thing will hopefully encourage more people to use the Palouse River Drive access, and hopefully increase some things on Willow Place there also. So that's pretty much it for that. And then one of the other things that probably best on, let's see, go to this one here. One of the things that's shown on this plan is, all of the landscaping that's required by the city. But then there's still a little bit of buffer there. There's still some extra buffer here. There's extra buffer here. There's some extra pieces there. There's some extra pieces there. There's all of this extra area here that is being included. And then there's, these areas here and some area out here in the parking lot that even as part of an island that we're not using as part of the required landscape, but the church wants to, beautify the area and use those extra areas. So they will be incorporated into those landscape areas and not just, they're not white space, but for the clarity of the plan so that you can see what's required by the city versus what's extra. They were kind of left in more of a white space, but they will be utilized to expand those parking areas. And the other thing that we did is that with all of these parking stalls up here, those always did turn out and go that direction. These here all turned and went up towards the neighbors. So we pulled away a lot of headlight, interference there for those neighbors. And this corner here is being lowered such that this actually is a steep drop-off bank down to the neighbors. And we're lowering this up by a couple of feet so that we can make this more of a landscapable area than it's really feasible right now. Those are some of the things that we're doing to alleviate influence on the neighbors. The other part is that even down here, all the parking stalls have been turned, parallel here up against the property line so that, on this property so that we're not having a lot of headlight issues there. And then we've allowed for extra large buffer over here to this neighbor for the pull-in parking stalls there. And then, of course, we pulled these parking stalls way away from the property line compared to where they were there. So that's more or less the things that have all gone into the design. There was originally the church really wanted to put the addition down this direction, down here. But in order to keep grades from this into the sanctuary, keeping that all in the same plane, this would have been a really tall building aesthetically and that kind of thing. And it would have shoved more of the noise traffic type things up against the neighboring property up here to maximize that. So, those things have all, placement of the building, placement of the parking lots, all of those have really been thought through to try to really be from, a physical plant side of things, as amenable to the neighbors as possible on those fronts. So with that, I'm done with my part of the presentation. I will have Brett from the church share some things, but I'd like to open it up to you guys for questions before I turn it over to Brett.
Evan, could you address the stormwater and surface water?
Oh.
A little bit. At one time, I owned 3 properties on Willowview and built homes on them. And one of the properties back then, we had a slight drainage issue.
Right.
And I was just wondering are you going to
So,
address the drainage?
yeah, so here, right there, there's a catch basin in the parking lot right now here that catches all of this whole area up here. It's being relocated to there because we're changing grades. That one goes over here to an easement that then goes down here into the main city system, which goes down into the park. It actually goes down here, back out here, back over there, and out to the park. It's kind of a circuitous route, but it does take it. There's a catch basin right here, right now, and that one goes down to the ditch line here that's along the street. It will now go into the catch basin system that's here. That ditch then drains here into a catch basin system and piping that goes across the road right here. That catch basin will be piped direct to here rather than into the ditch and that. And then as far as all this intermediate stuff in here and that, there's a bioswale that's the full length of this in here. Doesn't show up real well, but if you look on your plans, you'll see there's a catch basin up here. And then there is some, designated stuff on there with a special hatch that goes down through here. And so that whole thing will be kind of a bioswale that will catch water and take that on out to the city storm drain system. So
Thanks, Evan.
you're welcome. Any other questions from the design standpoint of things?
Question, Steve? You look in thought.
Well, I'm trying to put the new plans in relation to the old plans here. I'm trying to,
Yeah, if
do what he's
you look
showing.
on C205, you will see all of the existing stuff dashed in underneath the plan. And that's what this one is here is C205. And so like here you can see the jog in the curb line and the curb line going here. And then you'll see the line there that represents the existing pathway into there. And here's, existing parking and the curbs and all of that that's up in this area. And the existing parking stalls are even all lined out there on that. So you can see how the existing and the new parking stalls lay over top of each other there too. And
So I guess I do have a question.
yeah.
Right now, the road is coming in off of from the Willowview Place cul-de-sac.
Mm-hmm.
And it's gonna, and then you purchased this other piece of property that's.
Yes, the church purchased that lot.
Okay. So, and the new road is gonna be coming across that lot.
Right.
And how wide is that road gonna be? It doesn't show in here.
It's a 24-foot access, which is the city standard requirement for two in and in a 12-foot in and a 12-foot out lane there.
Okay.
How big is that in relation to what's currently there? Because
It's the asphalt that's there. Well, you can see it here. There's the 10-foot offset line right there. And then there is the edge of the asphalt there. And the asphalt goes right to the property line there. So it's about roughly 15 feet of asphalt that comes up through there. Two cars can squeak by each other in it, but generally they take the middle out of they take their half out of the middle. And
I drove both roads last night. And
Okay.
I would have a hard press to get my RAV4 either
yeah,
with somebody else coming on either one of those roads.
so either one of
So the one that
Oh.
goes out to Palouse River Drive or the one from Willow Place.
Okay. The one that's actually out to Palouse River Drive is actually 24 feet wide. But again, it's,
I think
you kind of do this S curve through there. And so everybody wants to take their half out of the center and do. And the idea being that we're shortening it up considerably and getting rid of the big S curve and trying to get them directed into traffic flow, a lot sooner into that, off of Palouse River
Palouse River
Drive.
Other question on Palouse River Drive, did you guys consider any kind of mitigation, or did the city ask for mitigation for like a right turn lane off of the?
We did discuss that with the engineering department, and they didn't foresee any need for looking at it. Yeah.
At the time of those discussions, were there 400 houses planned across the street?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That discussion happened. When did I come see you, Amy, and you sent that around to the engineering department?
I want to say it was about 4 months ago.
Yeah, about that. So, I mean,
But it was after Eddington had been platted.
yeah. So, upon encouragement from Amy and some of the discussion and comments that had come up, I went and met directly with the engineering department, and we went through street trees and that. And there's quite a few trees right here along this section, and there's already a retaining wall and a precedence for the sidewalk to be all the way along right out at the curb. And so the only thing they asked me to put in the plans was to widen this section, and you'll see right there's a little bit of a widening in the sidewalk that happens. So, but otherwise we were going to end up with, 8-foot plus retaining walls out there to try to then get a planting buffer, which then was going to cut into all of those existing trees that were there. And we might take the chance of losing the existing trees. And so they felt a better benefit to keep the existing established tree row there. And then we are putting a tree. The sidewalk is already there on Willow Place, but we're putting in a street trees on the backside of the sidewalk because the sidewalk is already out at the curb. So for the short little bit of sidewalk that's there, to bump that sidewalk back and put street trees in, and that they agreed to keep it straight, but that we would put street trees behind the sidewalk and then tie them in with the rest of the landscaping that was there. So.
So along the west line of the property, what's planned along there? I know there's the backside of the building will be there, but how far is that from the property line? And then what's between that and the property line?
So right now, the building is about 11-ish feet. If you look at the site plan, you can see that the existing building is not square to the west property line. And so then when we put the addition on the building, obviously we wanted to keep it square to the building. So there's a taper there in the setback there, but we get to it goes from about 11 to 14 feet. I mean, it's 14 plus, but I'll call it 14 feet of area on that west side. There is a row of very large blue spruces, and each one of those is were surveyed in, every one of those blue spruces along there. And so that's accurate as to what you see. And even the tree spread of the branches is about what you see there. And the branches pretty much go to the ground, and underneath those trees, not even weeds grow because of the acidic soil that the spruces produce, and the lack of sunlight and that. And so there really is, you really could, and then with the shade of the new building going up, you're not going to get a whole lot more to grow in there on that ground. I mean, you're going to have to find plants that grow in acidic. You're going to have to water the heck out of them. And I think that's kind of against what the city likes to see too, is, they're wanting to go to low water use or, type plants, and low water use plants don't grow underneath evergreens generally. So the idea is to try to save those evergreens that are there the best we can.
Okay.
And obviously, if we lose them, then that, falls back under the type A buffer that we're going to have to, have to provide there along that side. So,
You actually addressed the question I was going to clarify, because I think that's what you were getting at. And without asking Amy, I know you will know it meets the buffer requirement along that entire west side that
Amy
any
and I
city requirement
visited the
would
site
meet.
together and went through that. And so, yep.
Yeah, during the construction, those trees will all remain, so.
The intent is, I mean, if we, one of them, the top snapped out of it this year. And the whole thing was laying out in the parking lot one Sunday that they had to come in and clean out. So, but yeah, the intent is for those to stay. If they can't, then obviously that all falls under the requirements that becomes new type A buffer. So, and then at that point, if you take all the tree, take a series of trees out, then you would have the light. You won't have the acidic soil. You have the opportunity to be able to then go back in and do a totally different type of planting.
Any other questions for Evan?
Good.
I think we exhausted our questions for you.
That's all right. That's good. I'll just leave that one up in case somebody wants to use it to point anything out.
So my name is Brett Corgatelli, and I am on the board for Bridge Bible Fellowship. I've been asked to come and speak just from the church's perspective as to why we're doing this. I live here in Moscow at 7010 Camas Street. So Moscow, Idaho 83843. Is there other information then?
You covered it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Perfect. So really, appreciate Evan taking into consideration all the things that we've asked him to do. There's a few reasons that we're looking to expand our current facility. The first and foremost is that the current facility, we've just outgrown it. It's not very well laid out, and it doesn't meet well the needs of our growing congregation. And so we wanted to maximize the property that we have and use it to its fullest capacity before we look to do something else. And so we asked Evan to address the need for expanded sanctuary space so that we could have our congregation all meet together and worship together. The need for a space to congregate before and after. A lot of times now we spill out into the front of the building because there is just no area to conversate, to enjoy that fellowship. And so he has addressed that with that front part in front of the sanctuary. And then just a dedicated space for the youth group. Right now, our current sanctuary is pretty much a multi-purpose room. It's a sanctuary on Sundays. It's the youth group room for all their activities on Wednesday nights, and for other activities that we allow the community to use it for. And so just having those dedicated spaces where we can have just the sanctuary space separate and a meeting area for other fellowship, potlucks and different things. And then as well, one of the things with a growing congregation is we have a lot of children. And so just some additional space, classroom space for Sunday schools and different things. So, the other thing that we are very passionate about is just allowing our building to be used for the community as a whole. We want to serve our community. And as such, we have several different groups that meet there throughout the week. We have a homeschool co-op that uses it one day a week. We have the 4-H, I believe, meets there. There's a philanthropic group that meets there a couple times a month. So we want to be good neighbors. We want to be not only good neighbors to our immediate neighbors, but just good neighbors to our community as a whole. We look for opportunities to serve our community. So those were the tasks that we gave to Evan, and we feel that he's done a good job of addressing all those needs that we've addressed. So short and sweet. Any questions for me?
I got one. So you're proposing to go to a 510 seat auditorium.
Mhm.
It's not what you call it.
Right.
Same thing.
Sanctuary, yeah.
Thank you. What's your current capacity?
Our current capacity, if we max it out, we can get roughly 225 to 240 seats in our current facility. But we found, 80% capacity is about as much as you're going to get. It seems overly crowded when you hit 80%. And so currently we have 2 services on a Sunday morning. We're moving to 3 in September when the students come back. And so with the proposed addition and the new sanctuary, our goal is to get to 1. So we're only meeting once on a Sunday. Everyone can meet together. Obviously we can't predict the future. So if we continue to grow, we don't know if they'll have to eventually go to 2 services, but as it's proposed for the foreseeable future, it would be a one-time meeting on Sunday, probably 9:30ish in the morning. So rather than now, our proposed three services is going to go from 8 to probably about 12:30 to address all that. So.
Any other questions from Brett? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
With that, would anybody in the audience care to come up and speak in favor of the CUP? There's only a few of you, so everyone can have a chance to speak if you want. Okay, is there anybody who would care to speak against or neutral? Please come up and state your name and address and tell us your thoughts.
My name is Michael Kameen, and I'm a resident of 2041 Willowview Place. You saw some of my shrubs in some of the photos earlier. It's right adjacent to the driveway. I did provide notes, so based on your comments earlier, it sounds like most of them won't matter, but I want to just highlight a couple of things. My wife and I, we do believe the church are good neighbors, but we are opposed to the proposed expansion. Primarily for safety reasons and traffic. We've been in the house since 2014, so the church predates us, and not here to air dirty laundry or anything like that, but Willowview is not intended for the amount of traffic, parking, and whatnot that is on the road. Honestly, I don't think it's good enough for just the houses that are there. I think we probably need more space there, but especially on Sundays, Wednesday nights, other days, the traffic is, in my opinion, a safety hazard. Can't say too much on Wednesday. Our kids do go to the youth group on Wednesday nights, but where they're proposing the new site access is actually going to be directly across the street from the smallest children in the neighborhood. So I do recognize that from a safety perspective and a design standpoint, it should be safer, but I don't know that we could say that that's going to be safe for the neighborhood and the kids. I do have some concerns with aesthetics. With the application, it says that it will be in harmony. I would prefer looking at squirrels in a vacant lot. My bedroom and balcony would be overlooking now a parking lot where they're proposing it with the vacant lot. The other one that I would say is, I think most of the cars enter the church through Willowview Place. And I do recognize that with the changes proposed on the Palouse River Drive access, there may be more cars going that direction. But as it expands, and as noted, going from 3 services to 1, there's going to be more cars all at once. But in the future, if it continues to expand, there could still be more and more and more cars. I am concerned that the additional cars going through Willowview Place is going to be a problem. And it's still going to be, Willowview Place is still going to be the closest to US 95, which I believe is where most of the vehicles come from. So just someone driving in, that's going to be the closest entrance they go to. With that, the other one, it does mention there's 18 additional parking spots above what is necessary. My recommendation is take those 18 out of the vacant lot, but that's a personal preference. The street is narrow. My wife and I both had to brake hard at the top and the bottom of the hill for people coming and not paying attention. I'm not going to say those are all the church folks. I don't think it is. I think some of them are local drivers too, but I don't think that road can support the traffic. Winter conditions make it 10 times worse. It's much, much worse in the winter, especially as the snow piles in, the cars park into the middle of the road. The church, just looking at the application, it says there's no proposed changes to the use. In my opinion, adding a parking lot to the vacant lot, in my opinion, that's a change of use. It also says they were unaware of past complaints. Nate Anglin was the youth minister, and he worked with the building committee 3 to 5 years ago. We talked with him many, many times. I raised all these same issues with him, and I met with Pastor Kim and a few others on the building committee at that time. And then criteria for the application says off-site parking and congestion have not been observed. That's probably accurate. They probably haven't been observed, but off-site parking and congestion is a significant issue on Sundays, on other days. I know the homeschool group, they're nice, but they'll park on Willowview, walk over. We've had people park across our driveway, block us in for a service. So I do believe that the parking is an issue. I think I have anything else. Any questions?
I'm not real familiar with this neighborhood, but I'm assuming you live on the eastern side off of Willow. Is that
Yeah,
so north and off of the slide?
my house is right there.
Okay.
And apparently some of my weeds are actually on their property, so I gotta cover that.
Sharing your weeds. I don't have any questions. Anybody have questions for? Thank you.
you.
Carol, come.
Good evening. My name is Thomas Warren. I live at 2104 Conestoga, so I am, gotta hit the right buttons here, right? I am right there. So I live here in Moscow. Again, we're relatively new to the neighborhood. We're not new to Moscow. We recently purchased that property. So again, the church predates us. There's a couple of concerns that my family and I have. One of them has been addressed, and that was the drainage issue. And I do appreciate the great lengths that's been gone to establish harmony with the neighborhood. I am very concerned about criteria 2, the harmony with the neighborhood with this grove of trees here. My rear, the neighbor behind me, I think it's 28 Conestoga, and for us at 2104. That's a very, very important buffer. And if that was to be lost due to construction, there'd be a significant drop in property value. And it would be, those trees I think were planted in the 80s, I would guess. So we're probably looking at multiple decades before this would be reestablished. And even some of the area right here, I would encourage the city to take a trip out there. That's getting pretty thin, even though that the trees are there. So I'm very concerned about maintaining this, and any construction that would destroy this or any destruction of this due to the parking lot change would be very detrimental to those two properties. The second concern I have is under criteria 3, the nuisances piece. Some of it was addressed with the drainage. That was a question because it says the parking lot will be improved. I read that as to regraded, and I think that's going to be the case. I know we've addressed drainage here on this side down here. I'd be very interested because this parking lot does sit just above our property, what the mitigation is and what that new grade would look like for drainage onto our property. The second piece of criteria 3 that I'm concerned about is the CUP says that the parking lot has been reconfigured to better shield noise and glare to the neighbors. And that's partially true because with the new building here, certainly 2028 Conestoga, they're not going to get any glare. And some reconfiguration here, I can't remember that property here, but for here, and then into our property, there's been no mitigation for that. That is already an issue, but since we're new to the neighborhood, that's not something that we felt necessary to bring up. But when the CUP says we're addressing the glare, this does not address the glare. The problem is the north-south and the east-west configurations of the parking lot. As long as that's retained, all of these headlights from all of these vehicles are going directly into residential properties. Again, I do appreciate that this is going to expand. It sounded like that this was going to go from what I think is about 8 feet now back. Is that a fair statement?
It varies.
Okay.
Some of it is at 10 feet. Some of it is less than 10 feet.
So this configuration doesn't do anything to address that particular issue. And it is a pretty significant issue. Our bedrooms are on the other side of the house, so that's not necessarily an issue, but our kitchen, our dining room, our living room, that's a pretty constant thing, and this doesn't address that. The other piece is the operating hours. They list the series of operating hours. On most days, Sunday is the lightest day. On most days, activity begins before 6 in the morning. And oftentimes during the week, there are still cars moving around after 9 o'clock. That's not every night, but I would say most nights or most mornings I get up to make my coffee. I get up about 5:30. Activity is already going on. And then we're watching evening TV. And as we approach 9 o'clock, there's still activity. So my concern is that I don't think we have enough information on what the current operating hours are, and then what a threefold expansion of the property would mean. I mean, I can't imagine that wouldn't mean more traffic in those hours, and then potentially even expanding beyond that. So those are the three primary concerns that my family and I have with regards to retaining the trees here, the glare from the parking lot configuration that quite frankly doesn't address that, and then the operating hours. There's a lot more activity than is articulated in the CUP. Please, any questions?
I just, one for clarification, when you talk about glare, you're referring to car headlights and not parking lot lights?
So yeah, I'm referring to headlights and sun glare. The configuration of the east-west configuration of these means any head-on parking here, headlights are directly into our home. And during the summer, especially in the early morning, we get sun glare directly off those vehicles. So the criteria 3 for reducing the general nuisances, the proposed change it helps 2808. 2028, I absolutely agree with that. And this property here, I don't think it does anything for the other properties surrounding that. So that's my concern there.
Any other questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Would anybody else care to come up and speak against or neutral? That said, I'll give the applicant a chance to come up and make any further comments. Actually, the one thing, Evan, I actually would ask you to state is those dimensions you just mentioned, because the mic may not have picked up that 8-foot or 10-foot buffer condition.
Okay. Again, I'm Evan Laubach, back representing the church. A couple of things. This here is probably about 10 and a half feet to the back of curb right here. This is less than 8 feet to the back of curb at this point along that westerly property line as exists currently. And that'll all be brought back to where there'll be 10 feet along there, all the way along that entire strip. So that will give a little bit more, not a lot more room for buffer. The amount of parking stalls along here is really only being increased by one parking stall from here to here and that full length. And it's really right down here. We're actually taking out a parking stall here to put in that planter strip here. This area that is talked about here is a touchy area because there's a fire hydrant right there. And so there has to be some clearances provided for the fire department around that fire hydrant, and, you know, they want their clearances and that for vegetation. So, you know, there are options that could be looked at along that property line, you know, with those given trees without doing a lot of trimming on what's there. I mean, the spread on those trees is really pretty realistic. We actually measured the spread of the trees and drew them pretty realistic. So you can see they're right out there to the edge of that parking lot in a lot of cases. And in fact, Amy, when she showed a picture of there, you could see that those branches were right out there near the edge of that parking lot now. So, you know, we can definitely work with the neighbors. I know, you know, the church has given me some freedom to work with neighbors on some of these things. And it is something, you know, that we could possibly work through on that. I don't know exactly what the solution is. I'd have to actually go out there and just really comb that to see what could be done. There's not a lot planting wise just because of the mass of the trees, unless we start trimming them up a lot. And then I don't think that really addresses what he's, you know, what they're asking about there. Whether a fence might work, I don't know. Some of those kinds of things. But as far as the increase of glare along there, there really isn't, you know, much. It's pull-in parking now. It'll be pull-in parking, you know, when we're done. You know, these neighbors up here, this is all pull-in parking here currently, and that all goes away. It's all, and this is pull-in parking now. That's all there, all the way along there, all the way down to here. And that will remain pull-in parking, although it will be broken up with an island in there. So essentially the pull-in parking along that property stays about the same because it's getting a little more efficient, but we're taking some out with a landscape buffer there. And then all those stuff along the north now, there's no pull-in parking along the north. It's all parallel to that. So we'll cut down significantly on that. Plus, there's just a whole lot less traffic coming up there, presumably because there's less parking stalls for cars to come up around there. So it'll be about equal on the west side. It'll be a lot less on the north side, and on the, you know, the east side, it'll be about equal. And then, you know, we've been in contact with Mrs. Hirsch, who has the house there. She's the one that actually sold the church this lot here, and we've been in contact with her and going through each of the steps with her. And we've actually gone out there, staked out where the edge of the parking lot is with her, and she's, oh, really? It's going to be that far back? So she's actually been very pleased with what we're doing out there on that part of it. So, but like I say, we can sit down with individual neighbors and work through some of these other, you know, specifics on, you know, maybe plant choice, maybe short fence that's, you know, screening, something like that. I don't know. I mean, those are options, definitely.
I have a question about parking that you may or may not know right off the top of your head, because parking is always an issue in these meetings. It's always a concern.
Right.
And it seems like parking on the east on Willowview, there seems to be congestion. But it appears like by buying that lot, you've increased the number of parking stalls, which should theoretically reduce the congestion of off-street, or excuse me, on-street parking.
Which is why
What
we
is the-
maximized the on-street or off-street parking, and why we're actually providing 18 more stalls
That was the number I was wondering how many.
than is required. So the real idea there is to try to get everybody on campus, as you will, and try to keep them from parking on the street. There is no street parking allowed, as I understand. I don't think there's any no parking signs, but because of the lane widths, there's no parking on Palouse River Drive there on their frontage. Currently, there is parking on both sides of Willow Place allowed. talking to 3 of the neighbors around there, they are open to the idea of possibly doing away with parking on one side, making one side of that no parking. But obviously that's a city decision. It's something that we may look at, as we get into some of the more engineering things that we need to address on the plans. We may look at working with the city to at least look at the feasibility of whether it would be worth, for safety reasons to eliminate parking on one side of Willow Street. From what I know, observations I've made on their Sunday service is that the cars that are parked on Willow Place are there before, they're there early in the morning, because I've gotten there early enough to watch the traffic flows and that kind of thing. And those cars are already parked there from the night before type of thing. So one of them's, a sheriff that parks on the street there. So, and has parked backwards and.
He needs to leave quickly, or she.
Yeah, it is she. You're right. It is a she. I apologize, but yeah. But anyway, so those are some options that are out there that could possibly be looked at. But if safety is a concern, I feel like that's something that, we do that with engineering and what they feel is safe and traffic. But there's pros and cons to one service versus a couple of services. One thing you'll find with 2 services, especially, now they're going to 3 services. So the gap between services is very narrow. So you actually get 2-way traffic, people coming and going, which actually creates more congestion than if everybody's going one direction. So, you may increase the number of cars, within a window to some extent because you have one service, but they're all going one direction, versus when you have multiple services, you've got cars going both directions. And, like right now they're at 2 services. So you've got that full capacity of people, but they're passing each other coming and going from the church. And so you actually can create a worse congestion by having 2-way traffic versus 1-way traffic.
All right. Thank you. With that, we'll close the public hearing.
Joe, before you close the public hearing, can I ask Amy a question?
Sure.
Amy, do you know when the original church was constructed, did they require a conditional use permit?
I looked back to try and find the original conditional use permit file. I could not find one. I do know the church, this particular church, the use dates back to 1988. We do have a file for a conditional use permit that was filed in 2005 for an 1,100 square foot expansion, but that's the extent of the background that we have.
No. Okay, great. Thanks, Amy.
And on top of that, conditional use, churches and schools kind of fall in that same category of permitted uses with a CUP in
Correct.
residential.
In
Yeah,
residential,
okay.
correct.
All right, so they're formally closed, although we still may ask Amy questions. Thoughts?
Did we close the hearing?
We did close the hearing, so yeah, it's all on us.
Okay.
Marshall?
Well, it seems to me that the property and the proposed conditional use permit, the proposed construction meets or exceeds the city standards as far as buffering requirement, parking requirement, things like that, which is good. I like to see it exceeded. Thank you very much. I don't see anything alarming on it as far as, increased buffering. If the congregation could work with the neighbors to help maybe do some more buffering or fencing or something like that, that'd be great. But I don't think it's not going to be a condition on my part, because you already exceed the buffering needed as far as the city standards. So I think it's a pretty good proposal, and I'm glad to see the professionalism in the design.
I was actually thinking along the same lines in terms of the 7 criteria that they give us to look at. 1, 4, 5, 6, and 7 are, they're obvious. They either meet the conditions or they don't, and they do. 2 and 3 are usually the ones that we struggle the most with, and we've had testimony on kind of both sides of that, the effect of the harmony and the nuisance. But the design from what I see has improved that. It doesn't necessarily make it, perfect conditions, but it seems to improve conditions. Pulling that off the cul-de-sac on the west side, that seems like it would be a plus anyway. That's, I believe, the bigger grade issue on that side. How people use parking lots, I wish we could control, but we can't. So in terms of items 2 and 3, I think the proposal has tried to make the best use of those as possible. I don't think it definitely hasn't made them worse. That's my take. Thoughts?
So, okay, well, I too want to say, I think that the plans look awesome. Having driven both, like I said, driven both roads just yesterday. I think even if you considered making one an in and one an out, that may be beneficial off of Willow Place. If it was just a one direction into the parking lot, might be a good mitigation. I like the idea of a fence along the side with the gentleman who's speaking from the other side of the blue spruces. One of the problems that I'm got to get over, or I'm going to have to figure out how I'm going to deal with it, is one of the things with zoning is predictability. And the people that built or came to this neighborhood that are not part of the church came with the expectation that there was a 45, approximately 100 square foot building that's there now. And now we're dropping an additional 9,000 square feet on top of it. So we've just created a 10,000 foot structure in the middle of a residential neighborhood that has been there since 88, so nigh on 40 years. And this, while the plan looks great, 10,000 square feet, I would be concerned as a neighbor. And so I just have to figure out how I'm going to work on that.
I guess my response to that is, I think this one building isn't going to be as big of impact on this Palouse River Drive neighborhood as the 400 units going to the south.
This is true.
To be honest. And I'm thankful that Amy clarified, based on their lot size, they could make it considerably bigger, although they have a big enough lot that I don't think they'd ever build to the maximum square footage that they could cover their lot with. So in terms of predictability, I almost think now that kind of becomes a plus. They really can't, you wouldn't make a building any bigger. It would be too expensive to operate from a mechanical standpoint, just given the square footage they have. Often people are wanting to squeeze as much parking out of their lots as they can and then ask for some forgiveness. They actually purchased some land to actually make their parking bigger. So to that effect, I would say they're doing their best to try to mitigate the parking. I don't know if that resolves your trepidations
Yeah, I
towards,
know.
how bad could it get, or predictability in the future. But honestly, 400 apartment units that will predominantly be 18 to 22-year-olds, to me, would be a bigger impact in the neighborhood in the future than the church building.
Well, I think that I agree with both Jerry and Marshall that they've done a very good job of trying to mitigate the increasement of the building and trying to mitigate some of the issues with the parking. I think that my biggest concerns are the neighbors along the west side who are having issues with the headlights and sun coming off the windshields, because it affects our office extremely in the same way. It's just you can't move the sun and you can't move the cars. The cars are there, they're permanent. You know, they're parked there. You can't. There's not much you can do about that. So I would, and I don't see on their drawings that there is a lot of anticipated vegetation that's going to be put along the east side. There's quite a bit on the north side, but along the east side, there just doesn't seem to be much vegetation that is going to be anticipated putting in there, which I think would be beneficial to the people in that along that eastern property line. But especially where you don't have the building along the west side, you don't have the building there to shield from the headlights. You've got the parking lot there with the old spruces there that they're quite old. They're mature, but trees don't last forever, and after a while, they have to be replaced. And I would recommend putting in a wooden fence that would be high enough to shield from the headlights that are coming in there along the west line. It's about 150 feet from the building over to the end of the parking lot. And it'd be 150 feet of wooden fence or something that would be built high enough to shield those headlights. That I think would be certainly doable and showing concern to the neighbors. But that's my biggest concern is trying to get some kind of a shield besides the blue spruce that are there.
I have a Actually, Amy, a question for you. Was the buffer on all four sides addressed?
Correct. It will be a type A landscape buffer on all sides of the property.
One thing about the east side there, when you look at the grade of those houses are considerably
higher,
lower.
or
The
they're higher?
houses are lower than the parking area.
Okay.
That goes clear down the hill there.
Okay. Well, that has certainly a bearing on.
Yeah, 'cause you're familiar with the site. So on,
Yeah, I've owned,
basically the bottom of this is the west side. So does that go uphill? I don't see the grading. I don't see enough of a grading plan to know what's happening there. But I guess not knowing that, my only concern, well, I'm concerned with, requiring a fence, but even if they were to put in a fence as a form of mitigation, depending on the grade, you can only make fences so tall. And so depending on where these houses are, a fence may or may not block it, no matter how tall or short it is.
Good
But
thought, yeah.
I don't know that. So without knowing that, I
Yeah.
would be hesitant to require them to do it.
If you look on that map that you're looking, you can see the contours at least down towards the lower end of the parking lot coming around there to give you some idea.
They start to turn. The other thing that I would say, just knowing construction contracts, and you're familiar with these too, a lot of times in construction contracts, the contractor has to return the site the way they received it, or they have to fix what they broke. So theoretically, that doesn't always apply to landscape, but I think based on the construction of what I'm seeing here, that these existing trees, I think it's pretty safe to assume that they're not going to be disturbed by construction. And even if they are, the applicant could potentially have that in part of their construction contract to take measures to preserve that. They're also going to have to put in those straw wattles. They're going to have to protect any runoff during construction outside of there anyway. So I'm trying to address your concerns about this, the protection of this buffer here, and I don't think construction is going to negatively affect it.
Yeah,
And
and,
I can't guarantee that, but I don't think it's,
but after construction, these headlights aren't gonna be an issue to anybody along here anyway, because the building.
yeah, the building's there. It's just
Right,
in the same
Just that one.
spot, which is an existing condition.
Right.
Less one stall here plus one stall there, it seems like.
yeah, I counted 18 stalls along there. And it could be when there's nobody here, people parking here are also gonna have headlights, even though they're closer to the door. They might not want to park all the way over here. They'd be parking up here and those headlights are still gonna come in there. I mean,
People never park in the spots furthest away first, right? And so actually that said, Steve, a fence here might help if everybody's parked here, but it might have any impact at all if the people start parking here first. And again, I don't know, based on these grade lines.
Right.
It's hard to tell.
Well, I guess, Steve, on that comment, I mean, I wouldn't have any burning desire to fence up one way or another, but they do exceed the landscaping already, and there's nothing that precludes the homeowner from building a fence or adding more landscaping too.
Yeah, good point. Mhm.
More thoughts? Anybody willing to make a proposal?
I guess I would move approval of the conditional use permit with no conditions. And I would then actually ask staff to prepare a relevant standards and criteria document for us to see on it's Wednesday of the following week. Is that right, Jennifer?
It's August 16th.
All right, I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I think I'll second that.
I have a motion. I have a second. Steve?
Aye.
Aye.
Marshall? Jerry?
No,
And I say aye. So we have a 3-1 and it passes. That said, do we have, I know we have our next meeting scheduled on 8/16.
Correct.
Are there any other upcoming CUPs
Not at this
in the
time.
future? Okay. All right. That said, I motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.